This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and things you struggle with most so you can have more energy and less decision fatigue about what to eat, how to move, and you can change your thoughts to Flip 50 with the life and the energy you love in this second half. In the fitness and health space we occupy here at Flipping 50, how to manage money is not a common topic. We have covered it. It is, however, a common stressor. And in that way, it's relevant. I find so many times obstacles to reaching fitness goals are not tied to physical limitations or to a lack of knowledge alone, but often to the stressors. We've recently talked about relationships, for instance, and I'll link to that in the show notes, and to money. So if you're stressed, consumed by this shadow hanging over you, that is part of overall wellness and the basics of safety and security, it's hard to elevate your physical health. We've just finished taxes as we record this episode. I had the ill fortune of being at the post office the afternoon of April 15th. It's true, people really do wait until the last minute. The line was long and stressed. In fact, I left after a 15-minute wait in a super small store to return later for another 10-minute wait because I couldn't stand the people behaving badly circumstances. So if you've stressed a little about your finances, too little incoming, too much outgoing, and you're feeling buried, wanting out, but not knowing how to do it, I called on a client to help. Renee is a 50-year-old retired professor of Spanish who now dedicates herself to property management, travel, her family, and philanthropic endeavors. She learned to manage money the hard way. She made many poor decisions in her late teens out of innocent ignorance, spent most of her 20s digging herself out of debt and figuring things out, and by her mid-30s was managing her money to allow the lifestyle that she wanted. She's excited to share her journey with you, to encourage your process, and hopefully to facilitate your progress.
My pleasure.
Renee, thanks so much for being here. You know, I love that you're telling your own story and you've really turned it around so much that you're the opposite of what you once were. The important piece is that you get it. You know, this is embarrassing for anybody going through it, I think, to admit and to ask for help. And it's crippling.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about your use of crutches potentially. I mean, what was it about when you hit bottom? And obviously you were young, so a little bit different state of mind potentially than somebody who might be in her 50s or 60s or even 70s who's listening. But when you think about where you were in your late teens and your 20s as you found something's got to change, what was that like?
Well, I'm a perfectionist, so it was sort of my dirty little secret, if you will. But it also was isolating because who are you going to talk to about it? You know, it's not, my friends weren't at that point in my life going to be good consultants. And I didn't have, you know, I was coming from a place of scarcity and really innocent ignorance. So I didn't even know who to talk to, who's going to help me. So I just had to figure it out. And it's lonely. It's lonely and it's isolating, and it's not a great way to start out adulting. That's for sure.
or to transition if you're already been adulting for decades. What was really the turning point? Where did you say to yourself?
I mean, I said that to myself. I think that's really sort of the cornerstone of my story. I said that to myself immediately when I finally realized, okay, well, I was only $2,000 in debt, but I was a college student and I was working less than I was studying. Well, at least less than I was studying plus partying. I wasn't working very much and I didn't have any earning power. So when I finally realized how long it was going to take me to get out of debt and how much that was going to take out of my expendable income, it was a pretty immediate, realization that it needed to change if I was going to have any freedom. But I did not have the earning power to change it for a long time. And so I was, a victim of my own choices for a long time.
So what were your first steps? And I want to really potentially relate this to someone listening who may feel like they're in the same situation for other reasons, but
right.
feel as if they're living paycheck to paycheck and they have things that they cannot say no to. They may feel somewhat similarly to you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the first thing that I did is I got really clear on, okay, I'm going to have to set some priorities here and figure out what's a want, what's a need. And that, I'm sure, was not my vocabulary, because those are very modern words that we use in this context. But yes, I sat down with a piece of paper and a pencil. I didn't have a computer or Excel or any of the rest of that, but I sat down and I figured out okay, this is how much money I have to be able to pay for the sorority, have some spending money. And, my mom was paying my gas. So, okay, I realize we're trying to talk to 50-year-olds, not kids here. So let me erase that. I sat down and I figured out what I had, what I needed, and what money was coming in. I mean, that doesn't change. It doesn't matter whether we're in, the 70s or the 80s or the 90s or 2019, or how old you are. Those fundamentals they are fundamental and basic, and they are unchanging. Where's the money coming? How much money is coming in? How much money do you need to survive? And what else do you want? And it wasn't until my 30s that I was able to look at all of that without looking at it from a perspective of scarcity. It was always scarcity. It was always about what I didn't have. And so I was I guess it was my late 20s. I was in grad school and I wanted to do things that I couldn't afford. And I didn't have the debt that I had in college because I didn't go to grad school right away. And so I sat down again. I mean, I dug myself out of that debt between college and grad school, working a lot and living at home and just, taking advantage of every single opportunity that I had to earn money and every single opportunity that I had to not spend money. I exploited all of that gratefully and thankfully. So when I went to grad school, I was clear that I was not going to spend irresponsibly, but I was also clear that I was going to take on debt that was acceptable debt because it was a means to a different profession. And it was a means to a different profession that was going to afford me enough money to pay off the debt without making my lifestyle miserable. And that's key, because if I'd gone if I'd wanted to go to medical school, that would have been a different spreadsheet. I'm not saying I couldn't have done it, but it would have been a different spreadsheet.
Wow. Yeah.
So I knew what grad school was going to cost, and I knew what my base salary was likely to be out of grad school. And I knew that my loans were at a certain rate that would allow me to pay. I mean, I think I was paying it was less than $200 a month for my grad school debt, but I paid it for a long, 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 long time. But that's okay, because I knew I was going to always have whatever it was, $158 a month. That was not going to make me, eat rice and beans. So that was a very conscious choice. And the next very conscious choice was I did take on close to $10,000 in credit card debt while I was in graduate school to travel and study Spanish and study Italian. Those were conscious choices. I knew what the ramifications of them were, and they were built-in expenses that I knew were going to exist for X amount of time. I started to look at all of that from the perspective when I was thinking about grad school. Okay, I can't afford this. I can't go to grad school because I can't afford it. It's going to put me too much in debt. That was my emotional response. And then I don't know how I had the fortitude to then sit down and go, okay, let's really, what's the data? Let's look at the facts. So I wrote it all down and I looked at what it was really going to cost and what it was really going to mean in terms of debt for X amount of time, for how long after graduate school. And I realized okay, I can do this and I'll still have money to pay for a flat tire if I have one, and I'll still have money to pay for the doctor if I need to go. I'm just going to be not going out very much and eating a lot of rice and beans and, whatever. I will make sacrifices, but I will make these sacrifices to have what I want. And then it wasn't about scarcity. Then it was about getting what I wanted within my means. That was the biggest lesson for me. What luxuries can I afford myself and still not feel like I don't have enough?
Wow, very cool. So essentially it's like taking calculated risks. So I want to dig into how did you create the debt? Once you chose, this makes sense, I can do this, I'm looking at my future as well as my now, and juggling how I'm gonna live while I get rid of this. Did you do a bank loan? Did you do credit card debt? How did you decide
school
to pay
loans
for it?
they're just school loans. So I did those, and I did work in grad school, just so you know. And I paid for my travel with credit card debt because credit card debt was familiar to me. I understood it. I knew how to do it, and I knew how it was simple, and I didn't have to ask for permission. I already had the credit cards, and they were sure happy to up my limits because I had paid it off before. In fact, I didn't have to get any increased limits. At the time, I did not. I was still I was still paying off. I also had to buy a car because I needed a car. And so I bought the cheapest car that I could buy. The only thing it had that wasn't off the lot was AC because I live in Texas. But I mean, rolled up windows by your hand, push the knobs in. This is long after everybody has electric everything. But again, that was a calculated choice. This was the car payment that I could afford. Once I paid that vehicle off, I took a loan against the car and I paid off the credit card debt because it was a better loan. I don't know how I knew how to do that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know how to do that. I heard that somewhere. Somebody said it and I picked it up, or somebody told me. I don't know how I came up with it, but that's ultimately what I did. And so that was nice. And then the next thing that I did is I don't know if it was the next thing, but another thing that I did that was I don't like the word transformational, but really did bump the quality of my life up a notch emotionally around money, and also, financially, emotionally around money, and also just practically speaking in terms of the time that it took me to take care of paying bills. I got rid of every credit card that I had, most of which did not have balances on them. Or if they did, so I had a credit card for the Loft. I had a credit card for the Talbots. I had a credit card for Kohl's. I had all these cards and they do it today. Oh, would you like to get a credit card and you can have 20% off today? I got rid of all of them. I had a couple of gas credit cards because they were like grandfathered in. When I was a kid, my mom gave me a gas credit card so that I could pay for gas, and it was her money, not mine. Well, I just kept, to me, okay, I need a gas credit card. So at some point in time, that became my gas credit card, and I was paying for it, but I still had it. And I realized all of these cards are clutter, and it's clutter physically, it's clutter mentally, and it's clutter financially. And I, at that time, understood that it was good to have credit because, you want a credit score and all the rest of that. And I flew in the face of that. And I said, I'm not doing that anymore. I got rid of all of my credit cards except one. And if I needed to use a credit card, that's the credit card that I used. And if I didn't, I paid for it with cash. And I didn't carry cash that I didn't have to spend. It worked for me because I'm a very visual person, and swiping that credit card does not feel like nothing. I see those dollar signs racking up in my head. So it wasn't like, oh, this is easy, I can just pull out the credit card like it had been when I was younger. As I got older, it was like, okay, this is like writing a check. Here you go. And I'd see those dollar signs going in my head. That worked for me.
Wow. Yeah. So great system. Wow. Yeah. So great systems what if somebody's listening and they've just completed their taxes? Because I know this happens to me every year. I'll go through and I'll think, I'm going to be so much more organized next year. And then I'll realize that first quarter is already gone and you haven't done it, sister. So if somebody's listening and, they've just finished this tax storm that we're closing out, or maybe are still in it with an extension, and they're thinking, this is going to be different for me next year. I'm going to do better at keeping records and potentially at limiting spending or starting saving. What would you recommend as baby steps? What are the very first things? And maybe you've shared them.
But I realize I've not been particularly organized in my in my sharing. I'm thinking about listening to your podcast and how sometimes it's so nice when people speak and they're like very regimented. 1, 2, 3. Here's what I did. The first thing I think is to sit down and be honest with yourself about what's coming in and what's going out. And it's excruciating. It really is. And I'm helping someone, a younger person, do this right now. My daughter, my stepdaughter, and her husband, they're in their late 20s and they have a child. And it has literally taken months because I'm not doing it with them. I'm not, really holding their feet to the fire, but it's painful to write it down and be like, yes, I actually spend $60 a month on my nails, and I spend this much a month at the gym, and you realize all the money that you're spending. We get not insecure. We feel self-conscious of that, particularly as women. I think, we have so many, there's all of this, media and social media, and there's just all this pressure to look good and be good to yourself and do this for yourself and do that for yourself. When you start looking at where all your money is going and you categorize it, it's really, again, another word that I don't love because I think it's overused, but it is really empowering. It is truly empowering because now you're looking at it in black and white. Okay, this is how much money I make. I make $1,000 a month. I'm just using round numbers. I make $1,000 a month and I'm spending $150 on health and beauty. And that may be A-okay with you. And you may have that, but if it's not, if you really are hurting and you need that money for something else, you get to decide. You have money. Where is your priority? And it's interesting to see how people's priorities shift when they see in black and white, in the privacy of their own selves, where they're spending their money. It's different for every person. And that's what makes it so empowering. You can have that discomfort by yourself in the privacy of your own office, home, closet, wherever. Write it down. And it may take you a couple of months to get all that information gathered. And you might not realize, oh, gee, I'm spending $47 a quarter on dog treats for my dog. And actually, she doesn't even really like them that much. What's up? So
great point. I think the other thing that you've said right there is just that it may take a couple of months. And yet when you look at, okay, you have the rest of your life. So I think it's really easy for any of us in this situation, for listeners, if you're thinking, I'm never going to get on top of this. I'm so far behind that I don't know how I'm going to get control of it. First, I think saying that is, if you've said empowering, I'm going to say disempowering.
Yes.
Because all you have to do is start.
No, starting is the key.
Finish it
so
today.
Starting is writing it down and allowing it to take some time because it's new and it's money in our relationship to it is so terribly intimate. It's hard to do. So it's going to take time. Just plan on it taking time. And then let your priorities bubble to the top. That's the second thing. As you're observing it, be non-judgmental about yourself. Give yourself room to be like, oh wow, oh yikes, and oh wow, I'm doing pretty good with that. And let it bubble forth, and you'll figure out what your priorities are, and try to approach it with an attitude of abundance. In the lovely intro, you said that I got a grip on my money and had the lifestyle that I wanted in my 30s. And that's true. but it was a tight lifestyle. My ex-husband and I did not have the earning power that my husband has now. And so I didn't start doing some things, that a lot of people do for themselves and for their families regularly until I was in my 40s, because they weren't a high enough priority for me given what my income was. My lifestyle changed when I married my husband now, but my attitude towards money and the way that I manage it has not. And that's a realization.
That, yeah, that is a empowering, or disempowering, either way you look at it. I think, I've worked with a lot of women in a lot of different economic situations. And ironically, as a life coach and or a personal trainer, you hear a lot of things. And very often when someone it does have a lifestyle where there is more earning power, there often is more spending going on, and they may or may not be in any better situation inside when you look at what's really going on internally. So I think to anybody feels like they're disadvantaged, maybe because they've got a set income, even those of you who might be older and listening, or whose
Right.
position is pretty locked in, this is how much you'll make, or you've got certain expenses, you're still at power when you're choosing where it's going.
It
And
really,
knowing
really
is
is.
so
I
much
mean,
better than not knowing.
that was the biggest piece for me, was just knowing, and it's like, well, okay, we're going out to dinner tonight, but that means something else later. I mean, that's pretty much how tight of a budget I was on into my 30s, but I had great vacations all over the world and I had a great time and I don't regret any of it. Yes.
So good. So if we were going to summarize for listeners, or if you have something new that we haven't hit, what would be 3 takeaways that listeners could begin to implement to feel a little bit more in control?
I would say the 3 takeaways would be the one that I've been hammering away. Sit down and figure it out. What's coming in, how much, and how much do you need? And then second, figuring out what those priorities are, letting them bubble to the top, allowing time for it. And third, setting I use the word budget. I don't necessarily love the word, but determining what you're going to, are you going to save, or what are you saving for? How long are you going to want to save? Be specific about what it is that you want to do, set those goals, and then get a system in place. You use the word system. Get a system in place for holding yourself accountable. And a system is, it's different for everyone. I like to reconcile my credit card accounts every month. I have 2. My husband has a card. I have a card. And so I keep every receipt. And rather than having a box full of receipts that I have to reconcile, every Monday I sit down and I have a thing, and I just write in, okay, this was the grocery store, this was how much. And if it's Target, then I have to categorize, okay, what was it? Was it health and beauty? Was it the dogs? What was it? And that takes me 15 minutes every Monday. And if I'm 4 weeks behind, it takes me probably an hour and a half, because I do have receipts dancing around. But I don't lament it. I just go, okay, well, I didn't do that, so I did something else. You just approach it with, okay, I can do this. And you do it. You just do it. And you forgive yourself when you don't.
Awesome. Is there a question that I should have asked you,
Yeah,
Renee,
why
that I
didn't you
didn't?
prepare a little better for this, Renee? You were all over the board. That's my perfectionism coming out.
So, yes, it is, because I think you gave a lot of nuggets. And I think the biggest point that I'm walking away from or with is write it down, get it on paper, start knowing what you're worried about, because I think that's the weight of this whole thing, is the worry. And the not
I
knowing
think that
is so
is
much worse
you're
than knowing.
spot on. I could not agree more. And go ahead.
So
Well, I just want to say, I mean, the part
go
about
ahead.
forgiving
I want you to
yourself,
finish.
it's very easy to say, it's so much easier to say, oh, do this and that, and it'll all work out for you and it'll all be wonderful. And it's not, it's not a 30-minute sitcom that is happily ever after. It is a constant process. And I do screw up sometimes. I do disappoint myself. And that should be the second biggest takeaway. And it relates to every aspect of your life. You set up a system, you set goals, and nothing is linear. We don't make an absolute linear uphill, path to the top to the podium where we win the gold. It's peaks and valleys and plateaus. And as long as we're continuing to progress and move forward, then we have to, that should, I don't like the word should, but hopefully we can accept that as motivation and encouragement to continue the path, because really that's what it is. It's a path, it's a process, it's a journey. And it's actually kind of fun. I mean, it is. I think it's fun to know where my money is and what it's doing. And it's fun to see myself screw up and fix it too.
Fantastic, Renee. Thanks so much. And listeners, I'm just going to bring this back full circle. The real value of, as long as we're talking about money, that word fits really well. But the real value is taking some weight off your shoulders and off of your mind. So potentially, if weight loss, for instance, is a goal, or more energy is a goal, you're removing an obstacle. So you releasing stress from all sources, the entire allostatic load, truly matters to what else you're able to do. We don't get to put these into pockets anymore, where we focus only on my physical health over here and only on my emotional and my financial health over here. It's all related, and your body has one kind of stress manufacturing or stress deal with this machine, and you've got to make the best of it. So if you've got obstacles and you can't figure out, why am I not making progress, or why do I self-sabotage? Sometimes this is a key. And I will link to the other shows we've done talking about your relationship with money, and the one I did recently with Stan Paget on relationships and the importance there. If you have a question, please leave it below the show link at flipping50.com/finance, and join us on the Flipping 50 TV Facebook page. To get all the juicy resources and the links and notes mentioned today, visit the show notes. And again, it's flipping50.com/finance. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating in iTunes. It really helps. And then share this with a friend to surround yourself with a supportive community of women on this same journey. What are you waiting for? Start Flipping 50 today.